So welcome, you are in the Stanford Design System Decanter session. So if that's not what you're expecting, you're in the wrong room. Go click on the link. For those that are expecting that, great, we're glad to have you here. I'd like to introduce our presenters today. I will pass it to each of the two of them to introduce themselves, but I'll start with me because I'm selfish. So my name is Shane McKinney. I work for Stanford Web Services. I'm the technical architect lead, been there for the last 7 years. I'm also the Decanter project lead. So I've been on this project for quite some time. I'll pass it on to my co-presenter, Carrie.
Perfect timing for me to cough. Hey, everybody, and thank you, Shai. My name is Carrie Augenstein. I am a senior UI UX designer and the lead on the Decanter design system side of the work that we do. I've been with Stanford Web Services for about 4.5, almost 5 years. And I started at the GSB in about 2012 and hung out with David Tom over there for a while. And I will pass it to Yvonne now.
Thanks, Carrie. I'm Yvonne Tang, and I'm at Stanford Web Services now. I'm a senior front-end developer. I usually prefer to call myself Decanter Monkey, but I guess I'm also a Decanter developer as well. So I used to work in university communications for 2 years, and last year, end of July, I moved over to Stanford Web Services, so that's where I am. And I'm gonna hand it back to Shay.
Yeah, there's no monkey business here today, none of that, sorry. Also, just so to clarify to everybody that there is a lot of people behind the scenes in this one, so we definitely miss people in this slide, but just big thanks to everybody that's part of this. It's an open source project and it takes many hands, many eyes, and many skill sets to make what we're going to talk about today happen. So big thanks to everybody, and lots of you on this presentation right now too. We're talking about just you can use your Zoom participant, raise your hand. You can raise your hand if you get your video on. You can add it to the chat. Who has heard of this thing? Well, you all do that. This also is this is webcam, so feel free to put questions in the chat. We'll try to answer them as we go. It's an interactive thing, so please do feel free that you can participate and ask for clarity, and questions are very, very welcome. So a few of you heard this thing, so I'll give you a little background. What we're going to talk about today in today's presentation. The who, what, where, when, why, how, what is this thing? So why are we doing this project? Why do we have a design system? Like, what is it? What we actually got our first question already. Why is it named Decanter? We'll talk about that in a second. We've been doing this for some time now, so we'll talk about where we are currently and where we're headed. And don't worry, yes, there will be a live demo at the end. So stick around, you get to see it. So all those shenanigans, maybe some monkey business. So I'm going to take you on a little bit of the history of this project, where to begin. Would you believe it? Back in Web 2.0, no, I mean, not that old, but 2016 is when we started this one. It actually started off as a challenge. Mr. David Tom, who's in the room today, he challenged the University of Communications and Stanford Web Services to work closer together. So we've always been talking about, we're doing a lot of the same stuff. We have a lot of cross-pollination on what we do at Stanford. It would make sense if we work closer together. We like each other. We're good groups of people. We kind of work the same stuff. So what happened is, I think basically you set up a meeting and stuck myself and Kevin Garcia, from University of Communication at the time, in a room and said, figure it out. So we did. We started this kind of project in that sense, where we talked about what do we do? What do we work on together? And it turns out we did CSS, believe it or not, on the web. Everybody needs it, and we started writing stuff. So we started to put together a little package of CSS. So that's actually what stems from the name, because one of the things that we're using at the time to write CSS was Sass. One of our favorite tools at the time was a library called Bourbon. So we were fans of Bourbon and Neat at the time. We weren't a bootstrap group. So we ended up calling ourselves Decanter, because what it was a collection of things together. sort of, fermenting and getting better over time. So that's where the name comes from. It stuck. But the value is really, really stuck on this one. So I'm going to read our value proposition because it makes a good point here. So read along with me. But we're building Decanter for designers, developers, and site building groups at Stanford so that they may more rapidly create websites that are accessible, on brand, modern, compelling, and meet the university's guidelines and policies to using intuitive technical solutions that allow teams to focus on the true purpose of websites, making content. It's a big, long way of saying we want to make things easier for you to do your job. We want to take a lot of the time and effort that is spent in multiple different groups and aggregate it into a place where you can reuse it. Accessibility testing takes time and effort. Choosing color palettes, how you structure your HTML, what elements do you use, layouts and groups of things. All of those things take time. And we have policies and governance at Stanford that we all have to adhere by. So it makes sense that we share and we work together towards a common goal. So that sounds nice, but how are we going to do that? So we're working on a design system, and a design system is a project with goals. It has sets of rules and governance, so it's not fully open-ended. Yes, there is opinions in this thing, and that's intentional. We have an identity at Stanford, and we have an identity group, and we work with as well. There is a focus on the user experience, the user interaction, and the developer experience of the system as well. It's open source, so it's free for your consumption and manipulation. So again, we're providing things to help and not get in your way. And there's lots of tools available for you, both from the design and development side of things. So, shame. And it needs you too. So again, I mentioned we're open source and we like to share and get contributions, collaboration. So yeah. So you can kind of think of Decanter like Lego. It's full of building blocks. It helps you create a consistent look. So as different departments and different groups are building, consistency across Stanford, it builds brand alignment and also gives your end users that everybody hits a consistent feel and look and makes them understand they're at Stanford, recognizes patterns, and just makes everything more efficient and better. So these things are all too smaller parts, so we can do things like reuse them and not have to reuse whole sets of things. They're easier to test in QA, and it should be fun to use. It should be fun to build with. So Alexis is on this call. She mentioned yesterday that in another presentation, we were working together in Figma to work through some layouts and content, and she said it was tons of fun. A couple of times. So
it was fun.
There you go. Yeah. Thanks for confirming. So what is the project? So Decanter, the project, is a collection of design resources built out in Figma. There's some code that's hosted on GitHub, and it's a community of people who meet regularly. So we've got a monthly stand-up meeting. We've got a Slack channel, and we discuss and share things both openly in all those different mediums, talking about what's happening, what things look like, what works and what's not working, setting rules and deciding what features are next. So this is a group that is very collaborative in that sense. So there's lots of places where you can come and influence and hear and learn about what's happened. So why? I've been trying to tell you why, but Carrie's going to really tell you why you want to use this thing. I'm going to hand it off to you.
I will try. Okay, I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, and then I'm going to go into present mode. All right, cool. So Decanter, like we've mentioned already, it has a lot of nice component parts to it, not just the actual components, but the reason that it makes sense to use this can help with making your projects a lot more scalable, a lot easier. So the one example I like to bring up constantly is accessibility, which is a very, very difficult thing to do and to do well, and then to maintain. And kind of makes sense that we wouldn't want to do that duplicatively across the university. So Decanter offers that in a package where you've got a team maintaining and making sure that everything that we're building is up to snuff on AA WebAIM accessibility standards. So that's a really good one if you're talking to any of your teams or stakeholders or leaders or things like that. But the gist is that it's a base of reusable patterns that goes for code and for design. It'll speed up design and development. So this is deliberately scalable. So when we talk about design systems and front-end frameworks, that's essentially the idea, right? Those Lego pieces where we're providing the plastic, and then your teams get to decide how the thing is going to look, what color it's going to be, if it's going to have a face on it, that kind of thing. User-centered at its core, no question. Conformance to university policies and guidelines. Again, there's accessibility and branding in there. So we partner closely with Dana Gornosky and JB Christie and our new teammates, Justin over at University Communications, to make sure that everything that we're doing is adhering to. And then we're also a part of helping with the digital definition on identity. So for example, Yvonne and I get into color with Dana, and we talk about, why a certain hex value for a certain color, so that we can get that, we can try to achieve that accessibility when it comes to contrast standards. A lot of collaboration between campus units. That's super helpful. That was obviously happening from the jump. And though we've had the 3 people that are presenting today happen to be SWS members, but really at its best, we're doing a ton of collaboration with a lot of people across the university. Shareability of components, that's an obvious yes with Decanter. And then, hopefully the cognitive load gets reduced when we use some of the same elements across the university in our digital execution. Then you start to create patterns and things that maybe the color might be different in some areas, but for example, the brand bar, our end users start to get used to that being present across sites, and then they might start to look for it and expect it. And then you get, a little bit of added sort of security for the end user too. It's like, oh, I trust this. There's, that added benefit. Okay. So yeah, the idea is, we're making the baseline of the sneaker, and then everyone else, all of you guys, get to add the customizations on top. And shameless plug, anyone here who really wants to contribute with us, please, the door is open. We are constantly looking for anyone across campus who really wants to get engaged. We have bi-weekly Decanter sessions on Thursday mornings. So get in the Decanter Slack, which is at the end of this deck, and come hang out with us and start contributing, please, and thank you. Okay, so where are we now? We'll start with design. So the design system we continue to leverage Figma to build out our stuff, which is great because it's still collaborative and it's on the web, and you can use the desktop or the web application. We're improving our components with auto layout. So we're in the process of doing this now. This is a new bit of functionality that's available through Figma that makes it a lot easier to build components that are responsive to the content that's going inside them. We've updated and increased type sizes across Decanter. So like my screen that I'm looking at right now is a new machine. And as soon as I got it, all of our websites in general just zoomed way down. So Yvonne and I spent a bunch of time working with our team of designers to adjust for that. And so the font sizes have gone up. We expect to continue to do that over, maybe every 1 or 2 years. Our spacers are getting bigger for the same reason. We're adding bigger spacers as well. So the spacers themselves we're just adding kind of at the end. So, we're adding 100 pixel spacer and a 200 pixel spacer to make sure that we can accommodate for those screens where the density of the pixels is getting smashed. And then we have been designing for the traditional CMS, something where like Drupal or WordPress, where everything's kind of together, the front end framework and the back end, and all of that is baked into the content management system. And we're working with headless. Our SWS team is starting working with headless just in the last, it's like 8 months, I think. We started with Storyblock September-ish, 2020.
Yeah, I think it's kind of been brewing for about a year or so, but yeah, we're working with other tools and things now. So
You're
yeah,
right. It
going
has
from
been a
the
year.
traditional,
That's right.
PHP-based monolithic stack to much more. And we're looking at, React's the obvious choice, but opening the door for others as well.
Katria was working on a proof of concept this time last year with our Adapt,
Yeah.
our SIA team. Yeah, that's right. So it's been a lot longer. Apparently, a year goes by quickly, even during COVID. And I will pass it. Yvonne, I'm just going to leave this. I'm going to keep sharing until we get to your chunk, but I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Carrie. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the code, where we are currently. So we are currently still running version 6 on multiple platforms. So many of Stanford Web Services websites, the Drupal 9 sites, and then also University Communications have many sites, the WordPress sites also using Decanter 6, including one that you're probably really familiar with, like the Health Alert site. And we also have one live site that's running Gatsby with Headless CMS Storyblock that's also using version 6. We had our alpha release of version 7 earlier this year. So we have used it on one live site and then developing another one using version 7 as well. So there is going to be a shift of focus like on development from version 6 to 7 in the future. And then there are some changes to approaches and the tools we use. So we will talk a little bit more about that later. And I'm going to hand this back to Carrie.
Ping pong. Okay, volley back to me. Cursor in the right place. Okay, so where are we headed? So for design, a lot of what we've been spending time on over 2021 and a little bit of 2020 was doing these custom theme layers. So we're working with clients who want to use and employ Decanter, but then want to be able to add their, like we were saying, so we'll provide the sneaker, but then the design, and then even some of the touches around the design, like the way that the screen animates when it comes together, micro animations, things like that. So all the finesse, and certainly the personality, the look and feel for the Office of Development is a good example where we launched giving.stanford.edu at the very beginning of this year. And they're employing Decanter with their own theming layer on top of that. So we're pulling up right from the bottom of Decanter. We're going to continue to build out requested and or prioritized components. So, to a degree that has a lot to do with the projects that are actively employing Decanter and where we need to create new things. I do think that as far as the component system goes, and design really is focused on the component system, where I know that there's a lot more to the that's offered through the code. But we have a pretty nice, foundation of components now where, you have the banners, the cards, the buttons, the links. We have accordion now. We have form elements. I'll touch on those things in a little bit, and we can look at those things too. But yeah, so we'll continue to build out components. And then some of the things that we've started to talk about more very recently are those micro animations and whether or not we want to employ as accessible as possible. Where are we having discussions about parallax and generally coming around to, well, probably not parallax, but what if we did something where there was a slow moving video in the background, animated GIF, something like that. Or as you're scrolling down the screen, if there's some way to employ, just one layer of slight parallax, but more like background image. So things like that. So we've talked a lot more about that. And if anyone wants to participate in those conversations, again, please join us in our bi-weekly sessions. We keep going here. So yeah, so there's your completed new work. So we spent a lot of time on form elements. Bhavika Solanki and I spent a lot of time with our Adapt team over the last year building out those form elements and working with some of our other UIT partners on that. Accordion, alerts, list cards, gallery is a new one that's going out I think in a couple weeks. typography and spacers we've mentioned. And then in the past, we've used a set of custom icons plus Font Awesome. We're starting to move away from the custom icons just because we're finding that it's difficult to manage from the code side. So we're going to start using a combination of hero icons and Font Awesome. If any of you are using and pulling in Decanter through Figma, you do now already have access to those hero icons. That pack is in there now. And then again, the new completed work on the custom theme layers for the School of Engineering, that's up through D9. The Office of Development, like I've mentioned, we're using Storyblocks, so that's headless. We're doing online giving, and the giving.stanford.edu is their main public website that was launched earlier in the year. And we're working on the Alumni Association now, the home site, and a number of other sites through the ADAPT project. Okay, Yvonne, I'm going to back up and just show a little bit of Figma. Let me see, I'm going to get out of my screen presentation here. Of course, there we go, exit full screen. Okay, so I want to show just a little bit of Figma on the design side. All right, so here we've got, I'm inside of the Decanter design system. The project on the design side.
Gary, yeah, you should be in
Oh, you don't see it, that's right.
you could open it in that presentation window. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Okay. Okay, can you see it now? Yeah, sweet. Okay. All right, so we're in Decanter now. I am on the forms page in Figma. But for those of you who haven't had any time to get in here, please do log in and you can pull in. We can work on the side so that I can get you to pull in Decanter. But all of the sub themes that we build include visual guidelines, and that's like your style stuff, right? Typography, the grid system is in here for Decanter, colors, some shadows and shapes and things, and then our spacers are up here. And then you'll end up going through all the components, right? And we've got places where we can work on stuff, examples in action, but forms are new. And so if you want to take a look at the form elements, we're using these as a basis to style as much as we can on top of platforms like GiveGab. So often with forms, the platform itself does a lot of the demanding of things. So we try to style as much as we can to what you're seeing here. And then, relent where we can't. We got to give up in some places, which is fine, totally expected, especially when it comes to forms, because those are tricky. Bhavika is working on galleries, so you'll see those in there. Those are going out into Decanter and code within a couple weeks. And I can't show you a lot of the other things because we're in cycles with our Alumni Association, but those are to come. We've got launches coming up later in the year for a lot of these other projects. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and we can go back to any of this stuff if any of you have any questions on the design side, but I'm going to hand it over to you, Yvonne.
Thanks, Carrie. Let me get my presenter view and then I'll share my screen. Can you all see my screen?
Yep.
So let's see. So I'm going to talk about the code. So I guess the Decanter team, we really like analogies. Let me get to my slide. So Shay used Lego and then Carrie used Converse, and I guess I'm hungry, so I just used frozen yogurt and ice cream. So this is my analogy for Decanter version 6 versus version 7. So version 6 is kind of like when you order a pre-made sundae, banana boat. And then version 7, on the other hand, is like when you go to Yogurtland, and then you can put on all your custom toppings, and then you can go crazy and add different M&Ms. And so we are providing the M&Ms and all the toppings for you. So version 6, so all the components and variants are pre-assembled. So if you've been to the Decanter website, we have things like the cards, global footer, things like that. And we use Sass in the code for creating the styles. And then on the template side, we use Twig, which work very well with Drupal and also WordPress. And we also follow the BAM naming conventions for the developers here. So that's stands for block, element, and modifier. So it's a pretty common naming conventions for CSS for components. And version 6 also includes assets, which are our PNG and then SVG icons, and then also font awesome icons. But we found that it like when we have people trying to install Decanter, like sometimes the assets creates a little bit of complexity. So I will talk about version 7. So version 7, like I mentioned, it's like going to get a folio and you get to create your own customization. So we are using Tailwind CSS. It's called a utility class, utility first approach. So we are done with Sass and then the BAM naming. And then we are dividing Decanter itself into core and then also the components. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So the core is only the Tailwind CSS classes. So kind of I think of all the toppings you see here. So you use all the toppings and all the ingredients and then to create what you need for the websites. So as I mentioned, we get rid of all the assets in Decanter version 7 core. And then also we move the font awesome dependency. So some of you here are probably familiar with Tailwind CSS, but I'll talk briefly about what it is. So it's a utility first CSS framework. Is really gaining popularity really quickly, especially in the last year. And it's fairly new, but seems like a lot more people are using it now. I see on Twitter, seem like there's a constant discussion about Tailwind CSS. So what it does is you can add a configuration file, and then it creates a set of CSS classes. And and using only those classes and HTML, and then you can build all the components and your websites. And then you can see on this image here, for example, so that quote card with the quote and then the image is created by that bit of HTML, and then the green, those classes are the utility classes that generate the style you see in the quote card. So it's very convenient. So you might wonder, with only classes, how do I do responsive design with media queries? So they actually comes with responsive classes. So for example, here on the slide, so let's say you have a medium breakpoint, so you can just do MD : SU text center, and then large breakpoint, LG text, right? So what it does is like, for a medium breakpoint, you set the text align to center, and then on the large breakpoint, it set it to right align. So you can see you don't even need to write out the media query yourself, just use those classes, and it really saves a lot of time. And it also kind of forces you to go mobile first, because that's how Tailwind CSS is built. And it makes components really portable. And then it's very easy for you to add your own customization. So for example, maybe for this particular project, you have your own colors. Let's say for School of Engineering, you have your own color palette, and you want to change the background color of a button. So you just add a class like SUBG Poppy, for example, and then it will change the button to your own color palette. So this is the website of Tailwind CSS, and I encourage you to check it out if you're interested. They have some really good screencasts on the website as well. So I find those really helpful. So here, And I'll go back to the slide. So I'm going to show very briefly the difference in code. So this is a very simplified version of a button. So this is like for the version 6 approach. So we use the BAM naming. So you see how, oops, on the left-hand side would be the HTML. So you will have a link and an element with the class SU button. And then on the right-hand side, you can see all the stats that come with it. So you will have our Decanter mixin for padding, and you have all the color, font size, and then media query, and then you have your hover and focus state. So that's how it looks right now. So what does it look like in version 7? So basically, you will pull in the Tailwind CSS file that we generate for you, and then you can just write your HTML like this. So you see how all the code is in the classes. So for example, as you text 18, it means the text, the font size is 18 pixels. And then we have things for hover and focus state. You see the focus class at the end. So you can use those really easily to create your own components. And Tailwind CSS actually, I want to mention they also have really great, they have a lot of built-in, they call it variants. So they have support for dark mode, for example. So you can generate classes to add dark mode to your website. And then also things like reduce motion mode. So those are really helpful for accessibility as well. So what about version 7? So what it is we're using Tailwind, but it's Decanter flavor Tailwind. So we added customization so you can stay on brand. So for example, we added all the Stanford colors in the identity guide that you can see on this website. With the color theme setup, it will generate a set of classes for example, background colors, text colors, and border colors that you can use. So you will not go out of brand. So even though we have a lot of utilities for you, you will still stay within the design system. So kind of like, when you go to Yogurtland, you won't end up with a burger, even though if you go crazy with the topping. So that's the idea. So we have all the custom stuff like our base styles, the Decanter breakpoints, and then the fluid container that you're probably familiar with. You're using 999, and then all the responsive spacing and typography styles that Carrie talked about. And then there are more. So I'm going to talk about that here. And I am just actually going to show you a preview of Decanter 7. So this actually started as when I was working on Decanter 7, I built it for myself so I can see what I'm building. And then we end up just using it as a preview site. So we kind of dump everything here. We didn't spend a whole lot of time on it. So this whole page is built with purely HTML and Tailwind CSS classes. So you can see we have the rank bar, and then you can even add gradients pretty easily. And you see how these buttons, they have transitions. So everything is only built with Tailwind. So for example, I'll scroll down and you have the Stanford logos, and then headings. And then we also added several levers for base font sizes. So you can have, base font size 21 pixels, or you can have a smaller, I believe some of the older sites, we are on a base font size of 19 pixels for desktop. So we have 19 to 23. So everything scale up accordingly to your base. And then we have some base styling for lists and things like that. And then so color. So here you can see other colors that we, these utility classes are generated from the identity guide. And it is a one-to-one mapping. So anything you see on the Identity Guide website, you will see it here, and there are classes available for them. So these are all the background color classes, but we also have like text colors and border colors and things like that. So we don't have everything on this preview site, but they are there for use. And then we have things like drop shadows, base table styles, and some of these base styles that you can use. And then also things that allow you to create layouts, for example, with both CSS grid and Flexbox support, aspect ratios, etc. And so what about the components? You know, I've shown you like colors, typography, and then what about like global footer and things like that? So we changed our approach for version 7. So core only has the utilities, and we are splitting the component themselves into multiple projects. So we currently have a Decanter React repo that has things in it. And then in the future, we will probably add a Decanter Twig repo for the Twig templates as well. And then, so you can still use vanilla HTML. Like this, the preview site I just showed you is just HTML. And then here's a link to the repo, you can check it out. And then I am going to show you Decanter React. So it's built with Storybook. I think someone mentioned it in the chat. So it allows us to build isolated components that we can pull into our React projects. So this is what we have right now. So I'm going to start with something a little simpler. So we were talking about link buttons. So let's start with that. So for example, here's a solid, it's called primary button in version 6. So it has all the different variants here. And then, for example, the ghost button, and then you will probably ask like, why how come I can't see anything? It's because it's white. So I can here go to Storybook, has a lot of options. So you can, for example, pick a black background color, and then you can see your button. So and then you have multiple sizes, and also animation and icons. And then we built this Decanter React components for you to be able to customize them yourself. So like I mentioned earlier, like you should be able to add your own custom colors. So for example, here is one, we show you how to add your own custom classes, and then you can change the color, for example, and then also the text style. And you can take a look here. You can see, for example, if I am looking at the solid button, and then here are all the React, the properties that you can change. So for example, I can go from solid to outline, and then with the size, I can choose like toggle between big and small, and then default. And so there are a lot of things you can do. So you can change the icon, animation. So you can play with this, and then you will end up with a customization that you like. And then you can also see the HTML as well. So, or you can go to the doc tab here, and then you can get the React code for that component. So you can go, let's see, if I want the React code for the big button, just go to show code, and then you can see how you can use that in your project. So it looks like we only have 5 more minutes. So I'm going to show you a little bit more. So we have, for example, the alerts. It's a more complex component. So here in Storybook on the sidebar, we show you the variants that we support. So you can see there are many alert styles that you can use. And then we also have a lot of layout components. So for example, Flexbox, CSS grid. So you can, there are a lot of options here. So for example, in the controls, you can set how many columns, and then whether you want a grid gap or not. And then here's an example page layout that you can use for your website, for example, using our CSS Grid components. And then we also have other Stanford identity components. So the global folder that you're familiar with. So the Storybook has a responsive view that allow you to toggle between devices. So you can see here, you can look at it as if you're using the iPad. So we have that available. And then the brand bar, local footer, and the logo, for example. So I included the link to this website, and please feel free to take a look at it and then play with it. So people who are using version 6, they probably want to ask, what about the support for version 6 and then end of life? So we will continue to support version 6 for a full year after stable release of Decanter version 7. So the stable release of version 7 will probably be around early 2022. We have an alpha release right now. So probably kind of use at your own risk, like we use in our own projects. And then you can also continue to use version 6. So we're not going to remove it or anything. So as far as I know, the Stanford homepage itself is actually on an even earlier version of Decanter. So, but it's still using it and it's still around. So you can just continue to use it. And so you're probably going to ask, like, can I have Decanter? And the answer is yes, you may. So we included some links to the resources that we talk about, like the preview sites and then the GitHub repos. So please feel free to check those out. And then we have a Slack channel, Decanter, that usually is fairly active. So we try to answer questions as quickly as we could get to them. And then, so if you saw Carrie's demo of the Figma, the documentation, and you're probably wondering like how you could use that. And then if you would have any questions about the Figma side of things, please contact Carrie. So there's an enterprise license that's being negotiated. And then I'm going to pass this back to Shay.
Thanks for that. So yeah, absolutely. Like we were saying earlier, we definitely want you to join. So we take all sorts of contributions. This is an open source project, so things like testing, bug fixing, posting issues, just kicking the tires on it, all super helpful. Feedback, documentation. If you're a developer and you can contribute code, awesome. If you're a designer, you can contribute design elements and components, great. We also need help on just the running of the show, like operations and management, getting communications out, getting things documented, all of that and above. So all types of skill sets are welcome. If you're interested to help, please reach out to any one of us talking today. We would love to have you on board and join the community. So if you're interested, let me know. We definitely have seen a couple of new faces of recent, and I'm glad to see a few of them here today. So thanks for joining. We've been fielding a bunch of questions in the chat, but I do want to open it up for any verbal questions that anybody may have. Definitely some nodding and things going on along the way. So I'm opening it up to you. Any questions? Speechless.
There's a question in the chat. How many developers are actively working on version 7?
A good question. Active developers. So we had the original slide. So Stanford Web Services uses this as their design system. We have, how many developers do we have, John? 8, 9?
Not everybody's working on Decanter.
Not everybody's working on it though, yeah.
Depends on whether you can count me as a developer or not.
So we have, we work on this, not full-time. It's not a full-time project or anything. We work on this as we work on stuff, and we want, we do meet regularly. We do have sessions where we do focus on this from time to time. But yeah, I would say probably half a dozen active contributors at the moment. Feel free to put it into the chat. If you want to ask a question as well, don't feel like coming off of mute. That's fine. You can also ask verbally. It's okay too. The Decanter React Netlify site, is that version 7? Yes. So that Netlify React one is sort of the two-part that Vaughn was saying. So we are using our Tailwind core base to create React components in Storybook in that site. Not a bad idea. Yeah, we've got, so part of what we need to have help with in the operations is updating our current Decanter.stanford.edu website as well. So that website is all full of version 6. So we haven't gone live with version 7. So that's part of the process of getting it out. So things when version 7 are ready include stuff like having the website and documentation in place, being able to retire, move the version 6 somewhere where it can live and stay, so that, because there's SAS docs and JS docs and things in there as well that will still need to be preserved in there, but also work that needs to be done in order to have things like a transition path of some sort from version 6 to version 7. And whether or not that is an exercise that you want to take on for your organization, depending on the level of effort and what you're doing, is up to you, but we want to have options available for you. But yeah, no, the documentation versioning is definitely a thing. Yeah, these are great questions. And I appreciate the questions about versions and things. So that is definitely something we're very cognizant about. For those that are in the earlier chats as well, we try to be very, very careful with how we release and version things. So we follow semantic versioning as we go. So we're trying really hard not to break your stuff, things that do have major change, because this project is going on 6 years now. Technologies changes, trends change, design choices change, and we've got to evolve and grow with it, and we are. But we're doing it at a pace and at a reasonable amount of change at a time. Yeah, the Decanter is a huge. For those that aren't familiar with Tailwind, that is probably the #1 challenge with working with Tailwind. Its approach comes sort of one or two ways. So the traditional way, they've got a new just-in-time compiler, but the traditional method is to render all the possible CSS classes that you would possibly need ever to do the website, which seems like a lot. And it is a lot, and it does create bloat to a point where it actually can destroy your Chrome dev tools. So the remedy for that is another tool called Purge CSS, which works with post CSS compilers that analyzes your code and the CSS files created to output a new CS file with just the stuff that you're using. So it actually slims it down to only the CSS selectors that you have, makes it super slim at that point. And then you can compile, add that to other things like compression or serving it with Brotli or something to get it even down further from there. But it does take a little bit of work to get to use the Purge CSS. The new just-in-time compiler is a great thing as well, because that kind of reverses the approach and creates the CSS file on the fly by doing the reverse, looking at your code, seeing what you're actually written, and then compiling the CSS for you, which is a great thing. It also allows you to have some more arbitrary values in that method as well. But it's brand new. It's only a few weeks old. We're just exploring it. But so far, we're getting some good returns. But good questions.
Everybody want to come off of mute to do a round of applause for our wonderful
Thank you,
session
John.
host here?
Yay.
Everyone, appreciate it.
Cool. Well, thank you all for joining us today. I hope you guys
hanging
are
out.
enjoying your camp. Hope everyone's having fun. Continue to see sessions. Anyone want the final word?
Sean had one final question about purge CSS for Drupal.
Not yet, but we would like to explore that.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good weekend.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
everyone.
everyone.
Take care.